Hey, I have just had my mind thoroughly blown by Bit.Trip Core, so I'm probably not the best person to talk about the game right now, but luckily I am joined by Alex Neuse from Gaijin Games, and you, sir, are the game's designer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I'm feeling just a little kind of, it's a high speed, kind of high stress sort of experience, but so we've been talking about the game, and you've got kind of you mentioned art style, which is another Nintendo franchise,
sure.
And you've got kind of an art style thing going on here where you've got a consistent, aesthetic, kind of similar gameplay styles from game to game, but unlike those kind of one-off games, you say that you've got, this 6-installment series where you're actually telling a story. So can you tell us, what are the themes you're trying to put into this series, and what is the continuity that we should be looking for from game to game here?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about it, but I want to leave it kind of open for interpretation, which I think is going to be really cool when players start to think about what's going on with this game and stuff. But you'll notice when you play Bit.Trip Beat, there are cutscenes and there's the background art and there's the music and everything that kind of gives a vibe to the game, tells a little bit of a story there. And in Bit.Trip Core, that story is continued through the same means, so the cutscenes, the background art, and the discerning player will be able to pick it apart a little bit and start to think okay, well, what is Commander Video all about? What's going on? Because it is Commander Video's story. That much I'll tell you. Straight up, it's Commander Video's story, and he's kind of telling it in his own way through these games.
So you guys are exploring different kinds of gameplay from game to game. Beat has got, tilt, analog kind of control, and then here it's just straight digital, it's D-pad and button. What dictates, from game to game, what kind of focus you're going to have, and what are some of the other kind of styles that we can look for?
Well, the gameplay complements the story that we're trying to tell, and in Bit.Trip Beat, we went with the severely analog, if you will, sort of spinner style control that you can do with the Wii Remote. And I'll just take this opportunity to lament the passing of the spinner controller, because that thing is awesome and we should have more games that use it. But the Wii Remote is a great substitute, so I think more games should be made in that style. But anyway, so that was sort of taking the very first games that were made back in the 70s and saying that's our starting point, because games started there, sort of, at least as far as the Bit.Trip series is concerned, everything started then. So that's where the beginning is. Then, with Bit.Trip Core, we wanted to take it to a logical next step, which was D-pad and button press. And that's very familiar to a lot of people, sometimes even more familiar than analog control. And with that straight-up on-off digital control comes a more rigid gameplay style and is a lot more suited to Bit.Trip Core, which is very precisely rhythm-based. Whereas in Bit.Trip Beat, it was more passively rhythm-based, and this one is more actively rhythm-based.
Should we expect the series to kind of chart the evolution of the controller over time? I mean, are we going to see the nunchuck's analog stick come in at some point? Are you going to throw a power pad in there? Where's this thing going to go?
A power pad would be awesome. Or the Wii Fit board. Sure. That would be great. I wouldn't say that you're definitely going to see an evolution of controls, because I don't want to promise something that we won't end up doing. But what I can promise is that we are going to be changing it up from title to title. One of the things that I really like about, you mentioned the art style earlier, one of the things I like about those games is that they're wholly unique from each other. And while we are a little bit different in that we're telling a story, we want the gameplay to be unique from game to game. So let's say you don't like Bit.Trip Beat, but you really like Core, because let's say you're better at D-pad games, then there's something there for you in the series. And I think that by the end of the series, there's going to be something for every type of gamer.
What attracted you guys to the Wii platform and made you want to make a game like this on the Wii?
Yeah, there were a few things that attracted us to the platform. Primarily, it was the control. So we wanted that spinner feel, and we really couldn't get it on any other platform. And the Nintendo Wii, the Wii Remote is such an untapped, it has such untapped potential, I think. And we found some of that and tapped into it, and it just felt like a natural home. Also, our team is very familiar with how Nintendo works. We've worked on a lot of Nintendo projects in the past, so it was just sort of like a natural home for us.
Have you been making all these games concurrently, on top of each other, or do you finish one and then does that mean you can, whip the next one out in 2 or 3 months, or do you kind of have to have prototypes of everything going at the same time to hit this release schedule?
We actually have ideas for all of them, concepts for all of them, but we we start a game the Monday after the Friday that we finish the other one. So there's sort of no rest for us in terms of, okay, this game is done, on to the next, and we just immediately start the next. So we're definitely developing them in sequence, just like they'll be released in sequence. But the concepts are all there, so we know, at least in concept phase, what each game is going to be.
Before I let you go, I noticed that, if you don't mind me getting a little personal here, I noticed that your love of the pixel has extended to some body art. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your tattoo and how that may tie into the series.
Sure. The tattoo is actually not a video game tattoo.
It's actually from Voyager, isn't it? Is that what that is?
You're close.
Or not Voyager.
It was the Arecibo message.
That's what. Yeah. Okay.
That NASA sent into outer space.
Are actually.
Yeah, they're looking. NASA sent it out in 1974, looking for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Right.
And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's something about pixel art, that blocky stuff, that is really attractive to me. And I think that it's because I grew up then, and I grew up on the 2600 and seeing images like this, and it's sort of like feels like home for me. And in fact, this radio message is in Bit.Trip Beat, except the little human is replaced with Commander Video.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So, last question: if
Sure.
If the scientific community had, instead of that message, sent the Bit.Trip series into space, what do you think alien life's impression of mankind would be?
I would think that they would think we are mean because these games are difficult. I don't know, but also at the same time, I think that they would sit back and they would wonder, like what are these folks doing? Is this how they think? I don't know, because if you sent this game out versus Silent Hill or Indigo Prophecy, these are very different impressions on humanity, and I think that that's one of the reasons I'm in the video game industry, is because we all view things differently, and we all have our own takes on the world. And it's not that I see the world this way all the time, but sometimes I do, and so I'm expressing that through the Bit.Trip series. And after the Bit.Trip series, I'll express it in another way.
The sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to looking at the stars, or looking toward the stars, I should say.
Sounds
And
good.
thanks for your time.
Great. It was great talking with you.
Thanks.